My name is Dr. Emeka Onwuegbuzia. I have a PhD in Linguistics from the University of Ibadan. I wear many hats, and one hat, an academic and a researcher. On another hat, I work for a tech company, and I'm the language product specialist. I grew up primarily around people who are professionals and technocrats, if you will, and people who are in public service. My upbringing was very not narrowed, but very robust in that area, in the area where there are technocrats, there are experts. That was the life that I saw as a child. Well, it wasn't very clear I was going to be a researcher or someone in academia. I was almost bound to end up as a technocrat, someone who deals in this mind knowledge space. That was what was going to happen. So I didn't quite know, but I don't think that my path could have led anywhere else than where it currently led now.
I welcome you to I Testify show. I testify, you testify, we testify. On I Testify show, we chronicle the goodness of God and stir up your faith to birth more testimonies. On this season of I Testify, the Mind Your Gold series, we've hosted people who have told their story and journey to recognizing what they had in their house. And today we are hosting Dr. Emeka, a researcher and PhD holder in linguistics. A young man at that, telling his story of how his background helped him, of how, being around people who read, study, and all of that pushed him to doing what he is doing right now. I'm so glad he learned lessons from those things and he forged ahead. He tells stories of the challenges he had, how he was low on finances, but he kept going ahead. Congratulations, Dr. Emeka. We are pleased to know you. All right, enjoy.
My name is Dr. Emeka Onwuegbuzia. I have a PhD in Linguistics from the University of Ibadan. I wear many hats. In one hat, I am an academic and a researcher. On another hat, I work for a tech company, and I'm the language product specialist. So I'm here to talk about my gold story, the journey to how I understood and recognized the things I had to help me become some of what I am now. My upbringing was rather interesting. I grew up primarily around people who are professionals and technocrats, if you will, and people who are in public service. So I sort of had that background where everybody was always reading something or in some workshop, in some conference, attending some training session or brainstorming session. So everybody who I saw basically growing up were professionals in some way, shape, or form. One of my relatives was a legal professional. Another was an engineer, but working as a professional in that field. A couple of them were legal professionals. Some were lecturers. Some were finance specialists. Yeah, but it was just a bit of both. And that was really what I saw growing up. Yeah, so I would often very regularly be asked to go to the library to study, to read something, or close of day 4 p.m. when they come back from work, the newspapers, they just send them to me to read. And so I found a lot of joy reading and learning stuff on by books, and I'd read stuff on different like genres. Genres is not the word. Topics you will like. So my dad's expertise was history and literature, and so I'd read some of his books on Shakespeare. I'd read some Othello. I'd read some stuff when I was so quite young, and then I'd read some biology stuff from my other aunt who had lots of books in the library, biology books, paleontology, and stuff like that. And so I just found a lot of joy reading stuff and learning stuff from them. And very often there'll be a visitor in the house who would come and they'll be some about something interesting, maybe about some niche area in their specific field that made it interesting. So yeah, my upbringing was very not narrowed, but very robust in that area, in the area where there were technocrats, there were experts, there were public service officials and finance experts, legal professionals in those fields. So yeah, that pretty much was my upbringing, and that was the life that I saw as a child. I'd say that in my experience, it was really my family that helped me see where my abilities were tending towards and guided me along those lines. And so it was clear that I had abilities to be able to take information and process them quite well. Um, I was speaking well at the time. I was writing well. I mean, it sounds so mundane, but yeah, those were the building blocks of. And I was very inquisitive. I was a very, very inquisitive child, and so I asked so many questions. And so they nudged that base ability. They nudged it and nudged it along the way. And so, but I discovered maybe sometime while I was weird, while I was I think it was final year. I think I was doing a couple of times. So there were many, there were many, there were many iterations in between. But one iteration that made sense to me was a couple of times. Final year was really good because I had to write, of course, a long essay, and it was really impressive to me how I was able to get the concepts and produce what it is I produced, what it was I produced. So I would say that I had different periods of time but it just kept getting better and better and asking questions and answering questions. So it's not a very straightforward answer, but more like family got me on my way, and then at different points in different seasons, it got clearer that this ability to ask questions and answer them and understand clearly what is being required is not a very common ability, and that I could make a living out of it. Well, it wasn't very clear I was going to be a researcher um, or someone in academia. It wasn't obvious, but it was going to be something similar. It was going to be around this thematic, this domain. Certainly, it wasn't going to be business. It wasn't going to be some other thing because I didn't see any of that. It was going to be around this domain. I didn't quite know because maybe while I was younger, I wasn't actively asking the questions. Right? For me, growing up was a progression. You went to school, you did well in school, and then you practiced what you did in school. So that was the order, right? And so there was no, it didn't, I didn't maybe think about it so much. However, it's clear that the way that I was brought up, the choices that were made for me, the ones I made myself, the context I saw myself in, the people who I most spoke to, people who I most admired, were mostly technocrats. I had an uncle who it still is a better memory now, who I really admired. He was a medical lab scientist, but he was really good at it, and he was consulting for so many companies and hospitals, right? And I would often see him, ready to go for a conference, to go for a workshop, and his demeanor was just excellent. He was the smoothest, silkiest man you ever met. He was smooth, he was silky, he was so put together, and I admired it. I admired how calm he was always under pressure. I never saw him scream. He was always smiling in his plaid trousers and his tucked-in shirt. He was always just smooth. And so those are the people I saw growing up as a child. And then I had another uncle who, epitome of calm. It was so calm, like so smooth. Like when I say smooth, I mean like butter smooth. Yeah. So that was him. And so those are people I saw growing up as a child, and so I was almost bound to end up as a technocrat, someone who deals in this mind knowledge space. That was what was going to happen. So I didn't quite know, but I don't think that my path could have led anywhere else than where it currently led now. Not really, because there was no other choice. This was all I had. So this was all I knew I could do really. So it was all my eggs in one basket, right? And were there times I wondered if I could hit the heights I thought I could? Obviously, yes. Were there times I wondered if I was going to be as good as I wanted to be? Oh, of course. But truth is, I didn't have options. It was either this or nothing. I couldn't see anything else I was really good at, and I felt really led into this research academia space thing. So I wasn't going to just quit. And I mean, if I did, it would have been a very bad experience because imagine all the support you are getting and then you wear out at the end. No, I was going to say it's true. And I'm thankful that I got strength from God. I'm thankful because it couldn't have been done randomly. I think I was really strengthened for this. And yeah, it came to my PhD journey came to an end successfully. And yeah, I mean, when in a new phase entirely of research, and it's a lot more believing God for more, a lot more wanting to do more, a lot more stuff. So yeah, we're thankful. But no, I just there was no other option than just to keep going. So yeah, answered. Boom. So the challenges I faced, they were mostly external forces. So if the journey was to become a researcher and an expert in the field I'm in, which is linguistics, right? It meant you have to do a master and then do a PhD. Um, the thing is with graduate school, there's very little people can see you produce, right? um, until you become something. So you're spending long hours in the library studying or reading, and then it's not translating directly to any external economic value or sorts. And that was a challenge, right? And that was mostly from external forces. But I mean, back home. It was always go, 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 go. But people often ask. I remember a friend asking me in Yoruba. She said "Kilo mbaka," right? That's what I heard those words. Like, what are you looking for exactly? Right? Because I was always in school studying and stuff. And so I think that was the main challenge I faced with regards to juxtaposing my at the time juxtaposing my reality with expected economic results. At the time, it wasn't so. As you can imagine, graduate school can be very arduous, very long and strange. But yeah, I think that was a big challenge. The other one was, of course, the lure of getting some position and abandoning graduate school, right? So that was the lure. But I'm happy that I didn't. I'm happy that I stayed true because um, yeah, I mean now I can see some benefits of being an expert in linguistics and making some there is some value now that I can give and value that I can get. And so yeah. So the other ones that I would want to add would be pressure. Not really from external sources in now, but from like personal sources, right? I think knowing that people considered me able to do XYZ, I had to ensure that I met XYZ standards. And sometimes I would freeze because I was aiming for perfection, and then I would not do anything for a very long time. So that was a problem that I faced very often, and maybe I still do in some degree. But let's say that God's helping me through it. But the idea is, when I have those challenges, what I often do is, what's the next logical step? And so sometimes the next logical step is to write a line or read a paper or speak to someone, um, take the next logical steps. I was very sometimes privileged to um, meet the demands that people had of me in some way, shape, or form, of course, but eventually, did meet them. So yeah, I'll say that was a big one because it almost derailed what I needed to do very, very often. So yeah, thank you very much. One I'd like to mention first is that I had to be away from family for quite a while, and it looks almost obvious, but it was not. It was a pretty big deal. Um, and I was away for. I didn't see my family for maybe 2.5 years. Or one time my mom came to see me in the state I was in, but I missed like family events. I was away from childhood friends. I was away from so many people who I grew up with. Because I really wanted to make something out of my life in some way. So that, of course, that took me away from family and friends. I mean, that can be easy, right? New person, new town, new culture, new language. Yeah, and that was a different context. Another one I want to mention would be that there was a time I didn't quite get. So I was on a project that the funding finished, but we hadn't finished the tasks for the project, and then there was next to nothing. So the the PI in charge of the project had to pay from his pocket for our basic needs, which was data at the time. And I and some other colleague worked for maybe almost 2 years on just that basic next to nothing stipend, and it was a very easy time, right? Because I mean, as a young man, you'd want to earn your own money, right? I had to rely on family for support, and they did support, right? But I didn't have financial independence in some sense at the time. But yeah, it was a trying time. It was not easy because and then people who were asking questions like, what are you doing, what are you up to, we can't see anything, what are you this thing you are doing, when would it make sense? Essentially because they couldn't say direct correlates between what I was doing and then financial economic rewards. So yeah, but I stayed through, God helping, God helping, God helping, and yeah, we made something out of it. Thank you. So, first, I would like to say God. Um, um, my faith was very important for me in grounding me in how I navigated those periods and how I still navigate my life. My faith in God was a very present premise on how I carried on, and in very many ways, it defined me, as you can imagine. And so I saw everything from that lens. And so oftentimes, as it would, when I get exhausted, I'll be like, God, I beg, right? When I get exhausted and when things are looking bleak, as you can imagine, of course, periods of human existence are there, you have ups and you have downs. And I had some of those, and I would often ask for God's help, and I believe that God showed up so many times for me than I really can count. Another would be family. Family was so supportive. They I got every support you can imagine from my family, um, financially, emotionally, spiritually. I got every support you can imagine from my family. Big ups to them. They really allowed me thrive. Not very many people have the privilege of doing graduate study that is for my master that was entirely funded by my family, and having like picking up the slack when I couldn't afford a couple of things. And for me, that was very remarkable, and I'm thankful to them for it. And And whenever we spoke about something about my master's or my PhD at the time, they were very supportive and, oh, you're doing great, oh, you're doing amazing. And whenever we spoke, which wasn't very often, but when we did, it was sort of support. And to them, I owe all of this. And after my mentors, I had some mentors who were insistent on seeing me do well. They gave me room to serve, and yeah, some of them gave me access that was incredible. And just by being with them, speaking with them, talking to them, there was a lot I learned just by observing. There was a lot I learned by hands-on experience, and I was happy they gave me some very difficult tasks to do, because what it meant was I had to get better on the job, and I'm happy that I did. Those experiences shaped me a lot, and I'm thankful for them. I talked about it previously. When I wasn't earning much from something I was involved with, family stood up so many times to my cousins, my mom, my aunts, very many times would just, send me stuff, a lot of stuff to be happy. Sometimes sent me new laptop, they were incredible, and God bless them. For friends, for example, I had friends, I had friends visit, just come from out of town to visit me in Ibadan, and come along with, tangible hampers and gifts. And I also had friends even in Ibadan, friends I met from church, for example, would often cook sometimes and deliver some very warm bowls of rice a couple of times. I remember this one time I had I can't remember what it was, but there was something that was happening. Then a friend came to church and gave me a an impressive bowl of stew with very soft meat. Those things are really important. Then yeah, I had friends. Send me lots of stuff, and I'm very, very blessed to have them in my life and in my space. For people who are coming behind or who are with us as we journey along, I'd say be resilient. There is truly things don't really fall on people's laps, no matter how you wish it to. Right, so you have to really spend time to dig deep in the dirt to get some gold. It's difficult to find gold on the surface. You have to go through some grime and some dirt. And same is it with what you want. There's a lot of persistence needed in how you are going to go from point A to point B. And yeah, that's just simple truth. And of course, you need the wisdom of God to navigate through, because there are many choices. Right? Here's the point. There's many choices out there. You need to have some divine wisdom to know what choices to make at what time. Final note, I would say that the Bible says, unless the Lord builds a house, right? Um, what you want to be outside of God may not make a lot of sense. It's just that because there's an eternal focus in mind. So what you're doing, what you're really passionate about, think of it in an eternal context, right? How does it push? How does it benefit the kingdom of God? How does it move it forward? Otherwise, your energy is futile in an eternal context, right? So, final notes. But when you find that which God will have you do, when that locks in and you are certain, and that's how you and you've locked in on this particular purposeful thing you want your life to be about, pursue it with all diligence, right? One of the favorite scriptures is in Philippians 3. The Apostle Paul says that I may apprehend that for which I was apprehended of, which means that I may lay hold of that for which I was laid hold of. There's a reason that God has acquired you to himself. You have to get that reason clear and pursue it very clearly. That's my final note to you. And Masha Yahoo, don't do fraud, right? Because it's bad and it's bad. Cheers.